Hello and welcome to another episode of the Best You interview series. It's Gary here again. Thank you, as always, for taking the time to tune in to today's episode. And today I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Mike Mahony, founder of Top Tier Coaching Services, who is a leadership expert, a business coach, and host of his popular podcast, Gaining the Technology Leadership Edge, which we'll get a chance to chat about a wee bit later today. Mike's main specialism is in decentralized management and leadership, a system that he has developed after transforming his own career. And Mike used to work over 100 hours per week, barely seeing his family, and was on the verge of burnout. And then, after reworking his approach, he created a leadership framework that cut his workload by 60%, empowering his team to operate independently and ultimately allowing him to achieve a work-life balance while maintaining consistent business success. On the podcast, you talk, Mike. Sorry, on this podcast, Mike is going to talk about his decentralized A-team method and how leaders can empower their teams, boost productivity, and create accountability. You know, essentially working on work-life balance for high achievers. And Mike does use his direct experience to coach technology executives based on lessons that he's learned from his own technical leadership journey. That's a lot to consider there, Mike. Mike, thank you very, very much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely delighted to have you along here. So, there's a lot there that was in the bio, obviously based on direct experience. You took action on that experience to give yourself the opportunity to obviously course correct on your own life, and then you have an opportunity to help and serve other people. Can you give just the listeners a bit of an overview of your career and what prompted that move from, you know, your corporate career and to coaching and podcasting?
Sure. Yeah. I started out, honestly, it's kind of strange. I started out as a paralegal for about 6 years. And at one point in my career, one of the people that I was working for, it was a one-man attorney firm, and he merged with a bigger law firm. And in doing so, I was the only staff member that he had. So their technology director of the larger firm wanted to integrate our system to their system. And so he used my knowledge to help him with that. And then afterwards, he said, you know so much about technology. Why don't you work in my tech department? And, I thought, sure, I like doing that. So I took the job and I worked as a support technician doing networking and, putting together building machines, fixing machines. And over time, I built their intranet at that particular law firm, and was dabbling in a lot of different coding. And I moved on to start my own business, and wound up picking up a client who was building a delivery service software. So, like, think like Grubhub or Uber Eats. That's what they did. They were one of the originals, and they needed a software to manage their business. And so they brought me in to kind of be the go-between between there was a developer and their CTO, and they were speaking past each other. So they put
Yeah.
me in the middle to translate. That turned into me becoming their chief technology officer, and I worked with them for a good decade, building their technology, just basically anything that had to do with tech phones, computers, you name it, alarm system. I handled it for them, and that was where decentralized 18 was born. Actually, was that particular role.
Right. Excellent. So, can you just walk us through? You're the CTO for this company. It sounds like you're involved in almost everything that goes on from a technical perspective as it continues to develop and grow. As you're going forward, you're working 100 hours a week, you know, which is an incredible amount of time to be working and on
Yes.
each week. How does that then manifest itself into the decentralized A-team method?
Well, at the time I had two children, who were maybe 8 years old ish around that time period. And I barely got to see them. My wife at the time was starting to talk about, if you can't fix this, we're going to have to get a divorce because I never see you. And I just took a step back and I said, how can I change this? What am I doing wrong? I have to be doing something wrong. And the company I worked for was run by three entrepreneurs. They were two brothers and their best friend. And those guys were very much like into hustle culture and, do work, 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 work. And I started thinking about it and I thought, I have a team for a reason. Why am I always having to be involved in this person's decision-making process and that person's decision-making process, especially around expenditures? I'd give them a budget.
Yeah.
Well, if they have a budget, why am I getting involved? Why do they ask me? They have a budget. Is it in
Yeah.
your budget? Then spend it. If it's not, don't spend it. It's that simple. And so over time, it took about three to 5 months of hard just refining, like take a look at something, then a new iteration, change it a little bit, another iteration, change it a little bit. And I just started noticing that like I would have people come into my office and say, can I have 5 minutes of your time? And then 45 minutes later, they're still in my office
Yeah.
taking up time. And so the first thing I did was I actually got a timer from Radio Shack, believe it or not. I'm aging myself. And I said, okay, we only need 5 minutes. When the timer goes off, if you're not done, we have to schedule a meeting on my calendar.
Yeah.
And that cut back interruptions a great deal. And then
Yeah.
that enabled me to start focusing on my team. And, one of the things our CEO used to talk about was having the right people on the bus,
Yeah.
but he never really talked about what seat on the bus they should be in.
Yeah.
And I started noticing that, well, I do have the right people. I just don't have them configured the way that I should. And so I
Yeah.
moved a few people around. And then I had the big meeting and I said, okay, guys, here's where the big change happens. If it's within your job description, you don't need my approval to do it. It's
Mhm.
that simple. I don't need you to come and ask me. I don't need emails asking me questions about it. If it's something I have to help you like break through a roadblock or whatever, I'm always here.
Yeah.
But that's something that I need to do. And like immediately I saw 10 to 15 hours drop off of my schedule. And then, it sort of became habit that I just keep coming to the office, working long hours. And then I realized over time, wow, my team's handling everything. I'm getting less questions. They're more effective. So then I focused my efforts on making my CEO and my management team understand what my team was doing.
Yeah.
By doing that and communicating clearly with no jargon, they started to understand where we were coming from and the pressure to like, oh, you said 4 weeks for this, but can we get it done in two? That kind of stuff stopped because
Yeah.
they realized that I'm not just focused on your one little issue. I have a bunch of things. Like you mentioned, my fingers were in everything.
Yeah.
That's what the assignment was. So once you got your management team understanding what your team is doing, your team understanding what you want them to do, you can kind of take a step back and lead in what I call a decentralized management style,
Yeah.
which is pretty much polar opposite of what do you call them? A micromanager.
Yeah.
So, you instead of being over everyone's shoulders going, okay, what are you doing? You
Yeah.
you let them do their thing and you catch up during meetings. I mean, it's no different, honestly, if you think about it, it's no different than the way my CEO would handle me. I was one of his many executives.
Yeah.
Once a week, we'd have a touch base meeting. He'd find out what was going on. He'd say, I don't think that's a good focus. Maybe go in this direction. I'd do the same thing with my team.
Mhm.
And it does a lot of things for you. One of the major benefits, I like to call my team my tech army,
Yeah.
because by giving them a job description, a role to do, and then letting them do the role, they become extremely loyal to you
Mhm.
and they have your back on everything. They work extra hard to get things done. It even got to the point where they would say to me, oh, Mike, you just go home. We got this covered, because they knew I didn't want to work 100 hours a week.
Yeah.
And it just was a very interesting transition. And honestly, I mean, it saved my marriage. It saved my time with my kids. I got to see them, do more activities. My one daughter, my oldest daughter, she was a ballerina, and I used to go to her recitals right after having worked like 30 hours in a row, and you're falling asleep in there, and it feels horrible because that's your daughter up there and you can't even stay awake to
Yeah.
to see her. But that all got fixed. I mean, life has been completely different for like the last, oh, almost 20 years.
Yeah.
So
That's it's absolutely fascinating, and I love the opportunity of kind of the cross-pollination of your influence between your team, of course, and getting them set up for success, and then the key part of educating the your leadership and your peer group at the C-suite to be able to say, this is who we are, this is how we operate, this is how we are, this is why we behave the way we behave. Can I help you understand this a little bit better? So you give them the opportunity. You're essentially teaching them how to treat you,
Right.
as opposed to you being the pain of the IT department or the office of no because you just couldn't constantly push back and such. So it's great to hear that like there was a holistic approach to that rather than just saying, let's just fix this one part and then I can manage and manifest the other part because that might have become more difficult to do. So I know that you mentioned earlier in terms of the main catalyst was challenges in terms of missing family time. Was there anything else in terms of professional or anything else going on in your life that proved to be like that pivotal moment where you said enough?
Yeah, it was kind of a combination of health issues
Right.
and professional issues. So like we at our company, we had a very structured way of doing business. And we had a management consultant that would come in once a month and have a meeting with us where we would go through everything. We called it our vital factors meeting. So you think about when you go to the doctor, they take your vital signs, how's your pulse, how your breathing rate, et cetera. And they check all that out, your blood pressure. Well, we as a company would do those same things to the business. So what now? How much profit are we making? Is it going up or down? How's revenue trending? That sort of thing. We would meet, and then as a team, we would decide on where to go with this. Those meetings would last about 8 hours. They were long meetings. And
Yeah.
then all of a sudden they started having those meetings weekly and then twice a week. And I'm going, well, okay, now I'm giving you 16 hours of my time.
Yeah.
Well, how am I getting my work done? And it just the stress kept going up and up and up and up. And I literally had an incident where I was in my office and thankfully I was sitting down and I just passed out on my desk from stress. And one of my team members came in and they like had to shake me to wake me up. And I was like, what the heck happened? And they're like, oh, you were just passed out here on your desk. They thought I was taking a nap. And I thought, wow, that's really weird. And I started, as I drove home that night, I remember thinking about it. And I thought, this isn't worth it. Like, this just isn't worth it. But at the same time, I love what I do. So
Yeah.
how do I fix this? Right. Like, I can't just quit my job. That'd be maybe one reaction.
Yeah.
But if I did that, now I'm not doing what I love to do. So I said, that's when I just started to get into what I said in my previous answer. I have to fix this. I have to work less hours. It's the only way. And I actually didn't even go to my CEO and talk to him about it. I kind of wanted to take the action
Yeah.
and see what kind of reaction I would get. And it was interesting at first because they were so used to me just being at the office and they could just drop in when they wanted to, that
Yeah.
they had to adjust to that. But my mental health improved so much because nobody's meant to work 100 hours a week.
Yeah.
It's just not sustainable. And you never get a day off. Literally, I was working, you know, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
And even when I'd get home, it's why I no longer like these days, I don't have a laptop. I have a desktop.
Yeah.
That way, when I leave here, if I know I might need to connect, I'll bring an iPad with me and I connect to my desktop and
Yeah.
I do my thing. But it keeps my work-life balance in check. I
Yeah.
don't have to, I don't have to be like, oh, here, I've got a downtime. Let me pop open the laptop and start looking into work. I don't have to do that anymore because other people are making sure that the work is getting done. I mean, you have, as a tech guy, especially as a CTO, you're going to have an email administrator. You're going to have a cybersecurity guy. You're
Yeah.
going to have a help desk technician. Let them do their job. You hired them for that job for a reason. And if you were going to do it, why hire them? Save money.
Yeah.
That's how I looked at it. And so just the stress was what was just killing me.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, another perfect example of teaching people how to treat you in terms of, using your desktop as that physical anchor to saying, when I'm working, and when I leave, unless I'm taking the iPad with me or deciding to transport my desktop with me, you're going to be out of range. And then people eventually, hopefully fairly quickly, get used to that. And they're saying, it's after whatever time as you clock off, can we handle this on ourselves? Does he need to know? And then moving on from there. I think it's so crucial to set those boundaries and then live to those boundaries and taking the action steps that you need to take to give yourself the best opportunity to do that.
When educating the management staff was really important because at one point in my history there, I reported not to the CEO, I reported to the marketing director.
Right.
And he was the best friend that I spoke of earlier. And one day I got a call like 3 in the morning at my home that our network was down and you need to come in and, have a look at why your network is down. And so I came in, I got to the office at about 4 in the morning and I fixed everything. And then I think I left work. I was supposed to be off at 3 o'clock. I think I left work at like 2:45. And I get a call. Where are you? It's not 3 o'clock. Where the
Oh,
heck are you? And I realized he doesn't know that I was at work at 4 o'clock in the morning. He
yeah.
thinks I left work early. And I told him, I said, well, and I explained the whole thing. And he's like, oh, so you actually worked 3 hours longer than you needed to work. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I realized at that moment, they don't understand what it is we do unless we tell them what it is we do, especially a department like technology. Like, let's be real. An entrepreneur, they understand the money, they understand sales, they understand marketing, but the tech, most of them don't understand. And if they don't understand it, it's your job as that tech person to explain it to them so that they don't put undue pressure on you. And so
Yeah.
that was a real, honestly, an eye-opening moment. Like, where are you? First, I mean, who does that? 15 minutes
Yeah.
early. Where'd you go? But at the same time, I thought, well, I mean, it is my job to be here till 3 o'clock. I
Yeah.
left 15 minutes early, but he doesn't know why. So let me explain it to him. And it went over perfectly smoothly. And that was my revelation that, yeah, the management team doesn't know what we do and they need to.
Yeah, it's such a simple concept and something that as you're chatting there, I don't know that is often practiced in organizations. Having been in IT, project management for almost 20 years or so, prior to me embarking upon my own entrepreneurial journey, I don't know that there was a lot of active communication like that, where let me educate you in a language that you will understand about who we are, what we do, why we do it, and moving forward from there. So in terms of, I'm very interested, you have, this pivotal moment, which kind of compounds between home life and work life, and then something has to change. What sort of time frame are we talking here in terms of when you start to see the genuine opportunities or the genuine fruits of your labor and reduced hours, clearer communication, more autonomy for the team and such? What was that time frame?
Well, I mean, after that incident, I started implementing changes immediately,
Right.
but the effects of those changes really weren't seen for probably a good 90 days. And then I would say that everything was fine-tuned and it's kind of stayed the same probably after 5 months of 5 to 6 months of work. It was about 3 months to like get things in place, get people doing what they need to do, and then another 3 months of just adjustments of like, hey, you know what? When this happens, here's how we'll handle it.
Yeah.
And well, because the biggest problem would be like if I was in a meeting off-site previously, they didn't know what to do. Oh my gosh, I have a problem. He's not here. What do I do? And it was just giving them the confidence that I'm going to make this decision. I'm going to tell Mike about it, and he's going to back me up.
Yeah.
And, it's kind of akin to, we've all heard in relationships where they tell you, make sure you back up your partner in public always. And then if you disagree, have that discussion in private. It's
Yeah.
kind of an extension of that.
Yeah.
I would let them do whatever they needed to do. But if I ever thought they made a completely like boneheaded decision, I'd take them aside and I'd ask them to explain the decision. And I'd say, in the future, this is what I would have done.
Yeah.
You might want to think about that. And here's why. And they really appreciated that because they grew better and better. I mean, my turnover went to next to nothing for 3 or 4 years
Mhm.
because these people just loved their jobs
Yeah.
and they were constantly moving up the ladder. They were getting more and more responsibility. They felt like they were contributing to the end product.
Yeah.
Whereas previously, I'm not so sure they felt that way. And like I was always good in meetings about giving credit, like John did this piece and Al did that piece, but they didn't see that. They weren't in those meetings. But now I made it a point to like publicly acknowledge that. And they loved it. It's just when you get people doing the job they came to do, there's nothing better than that for them. I mean, that's what they were there to be paid for. And I don't know about other people, but I personally don't like it when someone steps in and tries to micromanage every little thing that I'm doing. And while I was never a micromanager, it was almost like they expected that. So they would come, hey, Mike, I need to buy these four new telephones because they're bad and it's going to cost this much money.
Yeah.
Do you have the budget? Yes. Okay, go spend it. It took a while for them to be comfortable just doing that on their own without asking me.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Everyone growing together is really what I'm hearing there, which is incredible. So, can you share a bit about your journey and then the motivations that you had based on your experiences that led you to create a practice that specializes in working with senior technology professionals, on essentially team leadership that helps them get their life back? And what sort of challenges have you seen? What unique challenges have you seen throughout that journey?
Well, about 7 years ago, I started doing coaching for entrepreneurs, just help them grow their business. I don't know why, but I don't find it as long as I'm involved from the beginning, I don't find it extremely difficult to scale a business. I think that there are steps that you can follow and just next, next, next. You can just run it through the machine.
Yeah.
And so I started teaching this to entrepreneurs and coaching them. And what I started to hear a lot was just hustle culture. I
Yeah.
have to do this and I have to do that. And, I have to work this weekend and I have to, I have to, I have to. So I started asking, why do you have to? And the answers I got back were varied,
Yeah.
but it made me understand that mentally, these people, they really felt they were compelled to work that many hours.
Right.
And so over time, I worked with them on, hey, you got to manage your time better and you won't have these problems. And then I started meeting with different, as history has happened, we've gotten more and more into these networking groups and meetups and stuff like that. And so I'd start attending those to make connections. And in talking to people, they'd be like, oh, I work 87 hours a week. Well, why? Well,
Yeah.
because I have to. Well, I used to work 100 hours a week. I don't anymore. Well, how did you do it? And I started to notice that there was a need for this specifically with tech executives. And I have never really connected the dots where I could say 100% this is the truth, but I believe it's because of what we were talking about. The rest of the company doesn't know what they do. And so because they're kind of a black box, stuff is just thrown at them and thrown at them and thrown at them. And they feel like they have to jump every time somebody does something. So that's when I came up with my PACE system, which, it's purposeful alignment, agile collaboration, clear accountability, and effective execution. If you follow those, you align your goals with that of the organization and your team. Then you come up with, who do I need involved in this so we can collaborate together? Maybe I need some of the sales team involved in this part to test. And you get that. Then you have, clear accountability. I used to do these meetings where we would do what's working, what's not working.
Yeah.
And if something wasn't let's say the mail server was having a spam problem. Well, obviously the email administrator is going to handle that, but I would put the help desk operator in charge of the project. They ran it. It ended up teaching them what the other guy did. They each
Yeah.
learned about their roles and they were more comfortable with each other. It also created accountability that wasn't there before. And
Yeah.
then, effective execution was just that you had a person who was not tied to the mail server that was driving the project and making sure that the execution happened rapidly. Because as a tech team, we're either going to be an architect, i.e., we're building a new solution, or a fireman, we're putting out a fire, there's a problem.
Yeah.
And mostly we do the fireman side.
Yeah.
And so you have to move quick. And
Yeah.
so that's what the PACE system was just designed to do is it basically it helps you manage your entire team in a way that if you follow the 4 steps, you get to the end faster than you ever would. And your people learn from each other jobs. I mean, I remember having a help desk technician that became a database administrator. She actually decided to go to school and learn it because she had to do one of those what's not working projects with a DBA.
Yeah.
So, it's interesting how people get inspired by the littlest things that you give them at
Yeah.
work.
Yeah. And again, just I can just feel that the commitment to growth, even if it was born from a necessity or a real genuine
Right.
need to make a change, that everyone has the opportunity to upskill and just be basically exposed to more opportunities.
No, exactly. I mean, it's actually, I just recently released a book called the Decentralized A-Team Handbook.
Mhm.
And in it, I give an overview of every step of the process, how to implement. And I finally decided to do that because a lot of people who either can't afford or don't desire to pay for coaching, and this way, the message can be spread, bigger, because I do believe in growth for people. I think that where managers go wrong is they look at themselves as sort of like the slave master,
Mm.
and you're not.
Yeah.
You're just the leader of the team. And
Yeah.
leaders lead. They don't berate. They don't belittle. They don't make people embarrassed. They lead. And I felt like there was a strong lack of leadership just throughout the entire tech community. And so this is where, why it's been a passion of mine for the last 2 years is to work with tech executives to teach them how to do this. I mean, at the top of the year in 2025, I will be launching a mastermind here in Las Vegas for tech executives to come and actually learn what I teach in a 1-year program. They'll learn in 3 days.
Yeah.
And they'll have my support afterwards to implement it. But I want to see every tech organization in the world get better work-life balance. It's just no reason to be working hundreds and hundreds of hours. I get it, there are deadlines, but there's ways to meet those deadlines without killing yourself. And that is the message that I want people to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of that, so obviously the mastermind, I'll put some details in the show notes about the mastermind if it's still open for people to get involved in. What, not to spoil any surprises from either the book or the mastermind, but what strategies from your personal experience would you recommend for leaders striving to maintain that work-life harmony or that work-life balance?
The key to it all is your team. Hire the right people,
Yeah,
put them in the right role, and then let them do their job and flourish.
yeah.
That's really the key. And it sounds simple, but it really isn't.
Mm,
But if you know you need this particular, let's just call it role X. If you know that you need role X, define what role X is. What is it going to do? What type of experience do they need? And then go out there and look for that person.
yeah,
And I get a lot of, hey, Mike, my company, I need a .NET developer. They're $150,000 a year, but I only have $100,000 a year. What do I do? It's okay. See, the hiring pool is just that, a giant pool of people.
yeah,
And there is a certain percentage of those people that are going to be willing to take your salary and your job role because they want to learn.
yeah,
So the first tip is if you don't have the budget, be willing to compromise on the skill level. Maybe you don't need an advanced person, you need an intermediate person, and then you train them up to advanced.
yeah,
Then you take that'll be like your pool of people, and then you look for the top 10% in that pool that's willing to accept the money
mhm,
and the role, and you hire from that. But
yeah,
hire based off of your culture. Do they fit?
yes.
Are they going to stir things up in a good way or a bad way?
Yeah,
Are they going to become a leader, or are they going to create strife within your team?
yeah,
It's obvious which way you want to go with those sort of things. And by doing that, you end up with this army of people as your team who just get the job done. They execute. Like, let's be real. One of the reasons why I use the term army is, as a general, do you go out and actually, generally speaking, fight the war? No, you don't. The soldiers do that, but you have to inspire them, lead them, train them, teach them what to do.
yeah,
And that is what the role of the executive, the leader's role is to teach them and inspire them to be better at what they're doing. And of course, you have the unfortunate aspects of you've got to deal with performance issues and whatnot. That's still there. But honestly, a lot of that went away when I let them do their job, because too many people, they look at the boss for how to do the job.
yeah,
And then the boss is all too willing to tell them how. But in reality, it isn't about how, it's just about getting it done. And
mm,
is it done correctly? So, like, a good example would be programming code. You're hired to write a function that calculates the sales tax. Now, there's a way I would do it, and
mm,
there's a way someone else would do it.
Yep.
But as long as it calculates the sales tax, it's accurate, it's efficient, and it does what it's supposed to do, who cares how they did it?
Mhm.
And that's the key. Let them come up with the how. Because once they come up with the how, they're more comfortable executing that process over and over and over again to the point where it becomes second nature. And I actually had people coming to me and saying, I don't have enough to do to fill my week. What do
Yeah.
I do? And I'm like, well, this is a great place to be. I can give you assignments, I can give you projects,
Yeah.
but this is a great place to be. This is what I want to see. I want to see you do your 40-hour week job in 20 hours. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And it made them feel super accomplished. I
Yeah.
have to admit though, like at first, when they first came to me, they were a little scared that, oh, I'm out of things to do. I don't know. They thought I'd say they were lazy, and I'm like, well, that's excellent. You got all the work done. This is awesome. Now here's more work for you to do if you want it.
Yeah.
Um, that's the key though. Just let those people do their job. Don't stand behind them and be clear. I mean, you could talk in jargon to your tech team, but get yourself out of that habit.
Yeah.
Speak in plain English, because then there's no misunderstandings ever, or at least there's no excuse for a misunderstanding. And
Yeah.
that to me was what was like the huge catalyst towards change in the entire organization, because we built a culture in our department that ended up spreading throughout the organization.
Yeah.
And strangely, my little situation created like a revolution within the company. Other leaders were like, hey, how come he doesn't have to work that many hours? What is he doing?
Yeah.
I had many of them take me out to lunch to pick my brain. It was a very interesting time.
Yeah, I'll bet it is. One of the main themes I get through all of this, Mike, is genuinely setting intention. And setting intention and then following through on said intention about I am going to hire this way. I'm going to integrate them into the organization this way. I'm going to teach them this way, and then I'm going to get out of their way this way as well. And being completely intentional and predictable, even with that, it seems like it bore the results and the rewards that you were hoping.
Yeah, it's a very intentional process.
Yeah.
You have one of the first things I do with clients is assess their leadership
Yeah.
style. And then we plan, how are they going to be able to accomplish all of this using that leadership style.
Yeah.
And there's only like one or two leadership styles that I would really say, one being, of course, being micromanager, that I would say, hey, ditch that.
Yeah.
But for the most part, you can do this with any style of management that you have. You
Mm.
just have to be comfortable stepping back and letting them do the work. That's the real key. If you're worrying about, oh my gosh, are they going to meet the deadline? Then you probably hired the wrong person. It's pretty
Right.
much that simple.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. Before I let you go today, Mike, I could literally talk about this all day because of my
Yes.
past experiences. I wish I had a mic when I was in industry, to be able to say, can we adopt this model out here? Because part of the most of the fight when we were doing IT type projects, or at least projects that had a heavy IT component, were genuine communication challenges, genuinely understanding the what's and whys and hows, and getting our project and our key stakeholders to accommodate everyone who's involved in the project, not just their own specific.
Exactly.
But before I let you go, where can people find out more about you, more about the book?
They can come to top tier coaching services .com is my website. And then if you just add slash DCAT book, it'll take you to the book page. If they're interested in the mastermind we spoke about before, or more about coaching, it's just decentralizedateam.com. And that is that.
Excellent. Mike, I can't thank you enough. This has been very educational and quite inspiring for me to learn from you today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate times like this, and you asking the questions that you did, and just having the ability to teach people that you don't have to work 100 hours a week in order to get your job done.
100%. Hello again. Thanks again for tuning in to this episode, and I do hope that you found it valuable and gained some insights. I do have an ask for you. If you enjoyed this podcast, I would absolutely love it if you would connect with me on my socials, and that's at LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. Just search for my name and do whatever it is you need to do there to follow me and stay updated with all the latest content, tips, and discussions. And for any more resources that you're looking for, feel free to visit my website, garygillen.com. And while you're there, you can book a free, no obligation 30-minute coaching call directly with me through the site. Whether you're looking to enhance your performance or tackle a new challenge, I'm absolutely here to help you succeed, and I would absolutely love to hear from you. Thanks very much again, and until next time, keep pushing towards your goals and getting better each and every day, my friend.